Hey, Matt here, and I want to welcome you to my house. And we're in this series called Fixer Upper, and we're talking about homes. So we're going to be at my house all series long. And we're here in my kitchen, and recently I had to do a little fix in my kitchen. The cabinet door was starting to sag a little bit. I could see like the hinge was loose, and so I had to do a little repair. This is like the main cabinet we use. It's the garbage underneath the sink, so it gets most of the use out of all the cabinets. And so I noticed that the drawer was starting to sag a little bit in the hinge, and so I unscrewed the hinge. I pulled out my screwdriver. I unscrewed the screw in the hinge, and I fixed it with a toothpick. You know, you just break the toothpick up and you jam it all in the hole. It's almost like wood filler, and screwed the screw back in, and now it's all good to go. You know, it's a little fix because the drawer was coming off the hinges, so I wanted to fix that. As we're in this series, Fixer Upper, we're not talking about DIY, like fix your house type things. We're talking about how we can do some fixes for our family, how we could build strong homes, strong lives, strong families. And we'll be talking all series long about how we can build these strong families. It's going to revolve around this one verse, Proverbs 22:6. It says, "Train up your child in the way they should go, and when they will grow old, they will not turn from it." That verse is talking about having a long view. It's about the goal for a parent to train up your kids so they will leave and succeed. It's about building a foundation in your kid for their best life ahead. And so as we're thinking about strong families, we're going to be talking about building a long view. So if you're a family of one right now, it's about having a long view about where is your future going. If you're a family of two, like your marriage, we're going to be talking about things about how we can build a strong marriage. If you have family and kids, it's about what you can do to invest in your kids to build a strong family. Even if your kids are grown up and out of the house, and maybe you have kids of their own, how you can influence them to continue to build a strong family. As we're talking about building strong families, it all begins with the foundation. I don't know if you've ever played the game Jenga before, but there's all these wood pieces and you have to take a piece out and you set it on top, and the idea is you take a piece and then the next person and then the next person, and eventually the whole Jenga thing will fall over because the foundation gets kind of wobbly, and then you yell Jenga and that person is eliminated. So that's how you play the game, but sometimes you end up playing with like a crazy person and they start taking pieces from the bottom first. Like if you take a piece from the bottom, it affects the foundation. And pretty soon there's like another piece. When you try to take it out, Jenga. The whole thing gets wobbly and it falls over because the foundation wasn't sturdy. Foundation is so important, whether it's for Jenga or whether it's for our actual homes or our families. Foundation is key. So what's the foundation for you and your family? Whether you're a family of 1, 2, 7, or you have kids or grandkids, whatever it might be. What's the foundation? What drives your decisions? What are you building your family on? What direction is your family going? That's why foundation is so important. As we're trying to build strong families and build a foundation, we want everything to be nice and level, and we want to be building in the right way, but then life starts to set in. And we all know how that goes. Pretty soon, it's like we get a job opportunity. It's like, oh, I got this new job. And now what does this mean for my life or my marriage or my family? Maybe there's good benefits, maybe there's extra work, maybe there's nights, there's travel, there's all these things that we have to try to balance it into the foundation. And then it's like Jimmy wants to play guitar or we want to do something fun. And so this is adding into another activity into our family. And then pretty soon little Billy wants to play soccer, and you get 55 emails about why he should be playing select travel soccer and what does that mean now for my time and the direction of my family. And then little Susie comes home and says Tommy kissed her on the playground, and I wasn't ready to start talking about that. And now the kids say, I only want to eat pizza. I hate broccoli. And deep down inside, you hate broccoli and all you want to eat is pizza, but you're trying to have them be healthy. And then all of a sudden your spouse is talking about the struggle with their in-laws, and all of a sudden you're trying to make everything level and balanced, but it's just getting wobbly because our lives are building in so many different directions. And pretty soon life can come off the hinges because we don't have a foundation. We're building and trying to support so many things. We need a foundation to keep everything building in the right direction. Whenever you go to build, you need blueprints. The blueprints lay it all out so you can build in the right way. I have some blueprints here as we've been working with a builder at church, and this has all the information for the building. It talks about how you're supposed to build it and where you're supposed to build it, and allows you to build in the right way, because if you get off course with the building, the whole building gets wobbly and the structure isn't sound. Wouldn't it be great if we could have some blueprints for how to build strong families? Well, the good news is that God gives us some blueprints, and we find them in Ephesians chapter 5 and 6. Throughout this Fixer Upper series, we're going to be looking at these two chapters and how we can build strong families based upon God's blueprints. I'm going to begin actually at the end of chapter 5 and verse 31 today, as we begin to look at how we can build a foundation. It says this in verse 31 of chapter 5. For this reason, a man will leave his father and mother and be united to his wife, and the two will become one flesh. This is a profound mystery, but I am talking about Christ and the church. However, each one of you must love his wife as he loves himself, and a wife must respect her husband. And children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor your father and mother, which is the first commandment with a promise, that it may go well with you, and you may enjoy long life on earth. Here we see some blueprints for building a strong marriage. It talks about a husband loving his wife with this sacrificial love. In Ephesians 5, it talks about how Jesus sacrificed himself for us and loved us by giving up his life, and husbands should love their wife in the same way. It talks about blueprints for a wife to love her husband by respecting him and submitting to him. It's a relationship that's built on sacrifice and submission to each other, giving yourself away to the other person. When we love like that, it builds strong marriages, which leads to strong families. And it's all a reflection of God and his love, it talks about in Ephesians 5. It talks about kids obeying their parents out of their relationship for God, out of respect for God, and honoring their father and mother. It's this whole blueprint of building a framework of love that builds strong families. But it's all built upon a foundation of God and his love. This whole section goes back to verse 1, and here's what it says in Ephesians 5, verse 1 and 2. Be imitators of God, therefore, as dearly loved children, and live a life of love, just as Christ loved us and gave himself up for us as a fragrant offering and a sacrifice to God. We see in these blueprints a framework, a plan to build a foundation based on God's love. Our lives and our families are built upon this foundation. And then there's this marriage relationship that's supposed to be a reflection of God's love. It's built on his love. And these kids who are following after their parents as they follow God, the whole thing is this foundation of being imitators of God, following him, living a life of love. When we build our families on that foundation, when the framework of our families is a reflection of that love, that's when we build strong families, when we have this firm foundation of God and his love in our lives, overflowing into our relationships. So we see the blueprint for building upon this foundation. There's this foundation of God and being imitators of him and living a life of love. It's all built on him and his love for us. It's letting that love fill our life and overflow to our relationships. So it's God is the foundation, and then it's the marriage, and then it's the kids. And that's kind of this structure that we see in the blueprint. So what does that look like as you're building a foundation for your family? In that passage, it talks about how important like a marriage relationship is. I've seen so many couples sacrifice that relationship for their careers or for their kids. And that's such an important part, even before the kids. In fact, if you look at studies, what's best for kids, a foundational element for kids is that marriage relationship for their parents. And eventually the kids are going to grow up and they're going to have families of their own. And you want that marriage to last. So you got to build that marriage on God's love and keep working and building on that marriage. It talks about kids obeying their parents. And so many times I've seen families get in trouble because that order gets flipped, where parents are obeying their children, and that's not the proper foundation. The kids become the foundation of the family instead of God. It's with the best interest in mind. Like, I want to do what's best for my kid. But parents end up obeying their kids, and the kids end up running the show. And I don't know about your kids, but my kids don't always have the best in mind. They want to always eat pizza and ice cream. They want to stay up late and not go to bed. They want to only do whatever entertains them. They don't want to be bored, so they want to be on their screens all the time. They don't want to do their homework. Kids aren't thinking about the long-term best. If we want to build a foundation for their future, to train up our kids in the way they should go, we need to teach them to honor their father and their mother. In fact, God says, here's a promise. If we have our kids do that, if our kids obey their parents out of their relationship with God, out of respect for God, and they honor their father and mother, their life will go well and that they will have a long life. That's a promise. So why would we try to sabotage that promise from God? I don't think we mean to. I think we have the best interests in mind, but so often we make a short-term decision instead of thinking about what is best to build into our kids over the long term. The blueprint, this foundation of God, a marriage, and then kids obeying their parents, all of that done out of this relationship with God, trying to be an imitator of Him and living a life of love. That's the blueprint. How we use our time can be a great indicator of what our foundation is for our lives and for our families. I'm here next to our family calendar, and as you can see, there's a lot of stuff on there, just like everybody else. There's a lot of things that can take up our time and energy in life. But those things can fill our calendars, but not necessarily fill our families. See, there's a lot of activities, a lot of good things we can do, but what we're talking about is building a foundation for our best life and our best families ahead, building upon this foundation of God. What's on your calendar, and what does that say about your foundation? Is it just full of activity, or is there space in there to invest into your life and to your kids for what's most important? Like, are you so busy that you can't go to a network event with your family to help your kids begin to look beyond themselves? Is there time to maybe be at church consistently, to talk to your kids about what they're learning at church, to maybe ask some key questions to your kids as they're going through life, to know about what's going on with their life and their friends, and to make investments into them? That's building a foundation. Activity doesn't actually mean foundation. See, if we're going to live a life of love and be an imitator of God, that's more about who we're becoming than what we're doing. See, a real foundation is about who we're becoming as we continue to build our families for our best life ahead. So as we look to build a foundation for our lives and for our families, it's focusing more on the long term and not giving in to any short-term reality. It's about training up our children and building up our families so that as we go through life, when we get older or when they get older, we'll go in the right direction. Our life will continue to take next steps to build ourselves up in God and His love. That's more about who we're becoming and our character of who we are on the inside than it is about the activities and the things that we do. So what are you going to do to build a foundation on God and His love? To be an imitator of Him, to live a life of love like He lived. What does that look like for you and your family to build upon that foundation? Maybe you're a family of one. Like, don't give in on the short term for the long term best. Like, don't settle for someone just because they maybe like you at the moment. Think about who you want to be connected to over the long haul. What's going to be best for you to build a foundation for your life and your family ahead. Maybe you're in a marriage right now. Like, what can you do to continue to build that foundation now, to set yourself up to continue to have a great relationship based upon God and His love? What does that mean for you? Maybe if you have kids right now, like, how are you going to make decisions? How are you going to keep moving in the right direction in order to build and train up your kids? How are you going to focus more on who they're becoming than what you're doing? Maybe you have kids that are older or they're out of the house. Like, what are you going to do to continue to influence your kids, to share with them God's love, to influence them maybe in their kids, to leave a legacy for your kids and your grandkids, all based upon that foundation? What does it look like for you to begin to build a foundation on God's love? Let's be imitators of Him. Let's live a life of love. Let's train up our kids in the way they should go. Let's build up our families. Let's build strong families based upon this foundation of God so that we can experience our best life ahead.